Nexus 10 Take-Apart Guide. You first need to remove the plastic plate from the back case. To do this, simply pry up on it with the flat side of your spudger tool. Once the plate is removed, there are 5 Phillips screws that need to be removed. You will need to use your 00 Phillips screwdriver to remove them. Next, use a suction cup to lift on the glass, and the flat side of your spudger tool to help pry the back case off the glass and the internals. Work your way around the entire display, separating the back case and the glass. Once the back case has become separate, you can then remove the display panel. Now, the best thing to do first is to unplug the battery to be safe against any electrical shortage to the motherboard. To do this, use the flat side of your spudger tool to lift the rubberized battery connection up and off the motherboard. Now, remove all the green anti-static tape from the cable connections. Next, use the flat side of your spudger tool to lift the lock that is holding down the digitizer flex cable, and then pull the flex cable out of the motherboard. Now do the same for the microphone and LED flex cable. Next, the LCD flex cable has the lock on the top side of the connector. Flip the lock and unplug the cable. You can now flip the lock on the LCD connector and remove the flex cable completely. To remove the battery, you have to first remove the 12 Phillips screws from around the battery. Now the battery can easily be removed. Now remove the 2 Phillips screws from the microphone and LED board. Then use the flat side of your pry tool to lift it up. Next, use the flat side of your spudger tool to unplug the 2 cable connections next to the speaker. Then disconnect the front-facing camera cable. After it is unplugged from the motherboard, the front-facing camera can then be removed. Now remove the Phillips screw from the bracket holding down the flash, and then unplug the flash flex cable from the motherboard. Next, use your spudger tool to lift the flash out of its place. Now to remove the rear-facing camera, Use a flat tool to lift the camera board from the motherboard. It is being held down with adhesive. Once the board is separate from the motherboard, the camera will lift out of place. Now use a flat tool to unplug the flex cable at the top of the motherboard. Next, unplug the volume flex cable from the motherboard. Next, unplug the speaker assembly. Once it is unplugged, you can then remove it. Now remove the 3 Phillips screws from the bracket that is holding down the USB and headphone board assembly. Next, use your spudger tool to separate the vibrator from the casing. It is being held in with adhesive. Lift the headphone board and USB board up, and then you can remove the EMI shield from the top of them. Then lift the whole assembly up along with the flex cable until you get to the motherboard. Now remove the 1 Phillips screw from the motherboard. You can now lift the motherboard up to remove it. You may have to use a flat tool on the right side of the motherboard because it is being held down with adhesive. You can now remove the remaining speaker assembly. Now remove the 2 Phillips screws from the HDMI board. Then use a flat tool to pry up the HDMI board. And last, use your flat tool to remove the volume cable from the casing. It is only being held down with adhesive.